Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 8 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today I'll be covering AD carry Vayne, the Night Hunter.
Let us hunt those who have fallen to darkness.
Alright, so let's kick off this champion guide by first looking at her pros. So Vayne is a champion that's pretty damn good at kiting and repositioning. This is primarily due to her tumble ability, which can also stealth you if you are in your ultimate, making it even stronger than it already was. Vayne also deals some really nice true damage from her W as well, so she is pretty strong against tanks. She then has a pretty strong crowd control as well from her E ability, which is pretty nice because most AD carries don't even have one, and she has an extremely strong late game. She can output an absolute ton of damage and 1v1 pretty much any AD carry out there. Now Vayne does of course also have her fair share of cons as well, and one of them is her low base stats. She gets stronger and stronger as the game does progress, but in the early game she is definitely not that strong. She's also got a pretty short auto attack range as well, making this even worse for her, and she has a lot of hard matchups because of it. As I said, she is a really strong champion in the late game, but she does need her items, so of course she is pretty item dependent as well. A Vayne that does make it into the late game with a full build, however, is one of the strongest champions in the entire game. For your runes, you want to go for Precision and Sorcery, grabbing Fleet Footwork as your keystone. At 100 stacks, your next attack will give you some really nice additional healing and grant you movement speed as well, making kiting a lot easier and giving you some really nice lane sustain. I then follow that up by getting Triumph, so I restore 12% of my missing health and be granted additional gold on a takedown, and also pick up Alacrity so I get extra attack speed on those takedowns as well. I then finish up like usual by getting Coup de Grace so I deal more damage to low health enemies. Now as for the sorcery side, I like to go for Celerity and Gathering Storm. Celerity is really nice because you will be granted 3% extra movement speed and also attack damage based on your movement speed as well. I then of course like to go for Gathering Storm so I get increasing amounts of AD as the game progresses, making me a really strong late game champion. For my summoner spells, I first take Flash. Vayne is a really squishy champion that doesn't really have any built-in defensive, so Flash can be used throughout the game to save your life over and over again if you do get caught in bad positions. You can always use it to flash forward as well and use it offensively to chase a low health enemy or just to get an angle so you can push somebody into a wall to get the stun off from your condemn. Now for my second summoner spell, I do take Heal. It is a really solid summoner in the bottom lane because you can use it to save both yourself and your allies. The movement speed on activation is also really solid because it can help you kite, or you can even use it offensively to help chase an enemy. Vayne's passive is Night Hunter, which gives you some really nice movement speed whenever you are moving towards an enemy champion. This does, however, only work on enemy champions that are visible, so if somebody is hiding in a brush or somewhere else, you won't actually get the movement speed from this ability. They have to be visible. It does have a 2000 effect radius, which is rather large, and you can chase enemies from a pretty long distance. Now during your ultimate final hour, this movement speed goes from 30 to 90. That means whenever Vayne is in her ultimate, she will have an absolute ton of movement speed as long as she's moving towards enemy champions and can chase them down really easily. Vayne's Q ability is Tumble, which is a really solid dashing ability. This also gives her some really nice bonus physical damage with a ratio between 50 and 70%. This ability can also critically strike, and it does reset your auto attack timer, so it can pump out quite a lot of damage. The ability is also really solid as a defensive, however, because it does have a 300 range and it's great at dodging skill shots. When you combine it with the movement speed from your Night Hunter, a Vayne can be pretty damn hard to hit. During your ultimate, this ability gets even stronger. Whenever Vayne tumbles, she will get invisibility for 1 second on cast, and since this does have a 2-second cooldown at max rank, you can be invisible rather often. Therefore, during the lane phase and team fights, use this ability to reposition, and if you are in your ultimate, use that stealth to be very unpredictable. Your W ability is Silver Bolts, which gives you some really nice additional damage, which is great at making it through tanks. Whenever you attack an enemy, you will put a stack of this ability on them, and it stacks up to 3 times and lasts 3.5 seconds. Attacking a new enemy, however, will remove all previous stacks, so you need to make sure you attack the same target multiple times. Now on that third attack, you will deal some bonus true damage, which is based on the target's maximum health, so it does an absolute ton of damage to high health targets. That damage, like I mentioned, is true damage, so it will not be reduced by armor or magic resist. The fact that the damage is not reduced and it's based on the max health of your target makes it insane against tanks. This ability is also great at taking Barons and Dragons, or just even last hitting minions, because of course it works on them as well. Vayne's E ability is Condemn, which is your fairly strong crowd control. When you activate this ability, you will fire a heavy bolt at the target unit, dealing physical damage and also knocking them back 475 units and applying a silver bolt stack. That means you can quickly proc your silver bolts just with 2 auto attacks, one of which can be from your tumble, and then you can use a condemn for the third one and push them away, having a really effective trade. Now the really strong thing about this ability, however, is when you do knock the target back, if they collide with a wall, they will take the same physical damage again and be stunned for 1.5 seconds. That takes the AD ratio from 50 to 100%, which is pretty damn strong, and during that stun you can easily get off a lot of damage, and in the late game, even delete your target straight up. In teamfights, you can always use this as well just to push a carry off of you so you can easily peel away from them. It's also great in that scenario. And your last ability is of course your ultimate, Final Hour. This ability will give Vayne some really nice bonus attack damage between 20 and 40, and of course buff her passive and her Q. As a refresher, the movement speed from her passive will be tripled, and she will be granted 1 second invisibility whenever she tumbles. The duration scales from 8 to 12 seconds, but if you do get a takedown during 3 seconds after attacking somebody, you will be granted extended duration by 4 seconds up to a maximum of the original. That means during a team fight, as long as you are getting kills or assists, this can be extended and you can have it for an entire team fight. So like I said, make sure you use the invisibility from the tumble during this ultimate to easily reposition during team fights and enjoy that extra AD and bonus movement speed. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then focus on maxing your Q ability first because it does have a scaling AD ratio and it can pump out a lot of damage for you since the cooldown drops 1 second every time you put a point in it. You'll then want to focus on maxing your W ability second. It has scaling max health damage, which is true damage, so it can output an absolute ton of damage for you, especially to those tanky targets. Now that of course means you have to save your E ability for last, but you do want to take a point in the ability at level 3 so you can pin people to the wall and get off some really easy damage, or just to peel yourself in team fights. Now let's look at a couple of your support synergies, and first up is Janna. Janna works pretty damn good with Vayne because she does have a lot of peeling for her, which can keep Vayne rather safe during the lane phase and in team fights. Her shielding ability is also incredibly strong and can block a lot of damage throughout the lane phase and give Vayne some really nice survivability. It also gives bonus attack damage, so Vayne will be able to pump out a lot of damage when she does have the shield as well and have some pretty effective trades. For your next support synergy, we've got Nami. Nami can also provide some pretty solid peeling with both her ultimate and her bubble ability. This is going to keep Vayne pretty safe throughout the game, but she does have a healing ability as well in case Vayne does get poked down throughout the lane phase. This is also great at poking, and she can always buff Vayne as well to make her attacks do more damage and slow, so she is all around great with Vayne in both offensive and defensive situations. Next is another great mix of offense and defense, Sona. She's going to give Vayne some really solid healing, also be able to poke the enemy champions, and even speed up herself and the rest of her teammates. Whenever she does land a really solid ultimate on the enemy team, she will stun them all, allowing Vayne to get off all of her damage as well and easily delete people. And for the last synergy here, I've got Tareq. Tareq is going to give Vayne a pretty strong lane phase because he will be able to both shield and heal Vayne. He's also got a stunning ability as well, which is great at peeling people off Vayne or just going aggressive and getting some kills. In really bad situations, he can always ultimate as well, making Vayne invulnerable, which is going to be really strong because Vayne can get off her damage no matter what, unless she gets crowd controlled. During the lane phase, you'll first have to focus on farming as much as possible. You are a very item dependent champion, so of course you need to get those core items as quickly as you can to start deleting people. You'll then want to focus on both dodging and damaging people with your Q ability. It's really solid at dodging skill shots, but it will also make you deal bonus damage and can output a lot of damage. During that lane phase, you'll also want to try to proc the damage from your W as much as you can on the enemy. It will do a nice chunk of true damage based on max health, so it'll even do a lot of damage to those tanky or support champions. Now, whenever possible, you also want to use your E to stun the enemy against a wall. This can give you a lot of kill pressure in that bot lane and get you snowballing. Finally, whenever you are level 6 and you feel like you're stronger than the enemy champions, you can always all in with your ultimate. It will really increase your damage output and you will have a lot of movement speed, allowing you to easily stay on the enemy. In teamfights, you'll want to try to stay on your backline whenever you can. Vayne is definitely a really squishy champion, but she does have a lot of damage, so try to remain as safe as possible and output your damage from a distance. You'll of course want to make sure you're repositioning and doing extra damage with your Q ability, and keep in mind if you are in your ultimate, this will be stealthing you, making you really hard to track down. You have to remember that Vayne is definitely a tank shredder because of her W ability, so try to get that damage off on the tankier frontline champions to get through them and then get to the squishier ones behind them afterwards. Now let's look at some of Vayne's hard matchups, and first up is Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa is one of those champions that's actually insanely bursty, and with the shield from her ultimate, she can be pretty durable at the same time and easily destroy a Vayne. If you do get a condemn on her, however, and push her against a wall, she's pretty much a free kill, so try to find an angle on her throughout the lane phase and in team fights to push her against a wall and then delete her afterwards. For the next hard matchup, I've got Kog'Maw. He'll be pretty hard to deal with throughout the lane phase because he does have a really long range when he reactivates his W, and it'll do a ton of damage to you. Therefore, try to keep at a distance whenever his W is activated and then engage afterwards. With your ultimate and his W ability down, you can easily destroy a Kog'Maw in the late game, so try to do that. Try not to teamfight with him too much. Next up here, I've got Misfortune. Misfortune's an early and mid-game powerhouse, so she will definitely have an advantage on you, but in the late game, you can easily destroy her. Throughout the lane phase, don't be standing near low health minions because if she does land a bounce double up, it will take pretty much half of your health, if not more. In the late game, you can definitely abuse her low mobility because if you get on top of a Misfortune, she doesn't stand a chance. And for the last hard matchup, we've got Twitch. This is a champion you can definitely 1v1 throughout the game, but when he does get to those later stage team fights, he is much more effective than you. You'll therefore want to try to get an advantage on him in the early lane phase and throughout the game because in those team fights, he's going to have an advantage on you with just his ultimate. When you see him in those team fights, try to get on top of him and delete him. Alright, now let's look at the item build, which starts with either a Doran's Blade Health Potion and a Warding Totem, or a Doran's Shield Health Potion and a Warding Totem. As long as you feel like the lane is at least somewhat winnable, I would go for the Doran's Blade, but against a really hard lane matchup, I would go for the Doran's Shield just for the extra defensives to make it through that lane phase. Now for your core build, you want to go for a Static Shiv, Infinity Edge, and your choice of boots. You can get either the Static Shiv or the Infinity Edge first. I usually like to go for just the BF sword and then get the Static Shiv just so I have some extra attack damage for last hitting in the early game. Either way, these items together will give you 50% critical strike chance, a nice on-hit charge attack that's great at clearing through minion waves, and some really nice increased critical strike damage from the Infinity Edge. With just these items, Vayne can already start putting out a lot of damage as long as you get some nice crits. Now, as for your boot options, usually I will go for Berserker Greaves because it will pump up your damage, but against a really high AD team, you may want to get Ninja Tabis as a defensive, or if there is a lot of AP or CC, you could always pick up Merc Treads. For your item pool, I would recommend getting some more attack speed and crit, and you can get either the Rapid Fire Cannon or a Phantom Dancer. The Rapid Fire Cannon is my favorite option here because it will give you a nice attack from an extra long range, but the Phantom Dancer is also a really solid option if you feel like you don't need that. Now next you have some really solid lifesteal options in the Bloodthirster, Mercurial Scimitar, and Blade of the Ruined King. If you're more so looking for some straight up attack damage, the Bloodthirster is probably the best option, but if there is a lot of crowd controls on the enemy team, you'd want a Mercurial Scimitar, and if there's some really tanky targets, then you may want the Blade of the Ruined King instead. Now if there are a ton of tanks, you may want to consider getting the Ginsus. This will really pump up your damage, but I would only recommend getting it if there's not a lot of enemies that can get on top of you, because if you can't stand their auto-attacking, it's going to stack really slowly and not do too much for you. If you feel like you're pretty safe, however, it can really increase your damage. If you then feel like you need some armor penetration, you can get either the LDR or the Mortal Reminder. Usually these aren't too needed on Vayne because of your W ability, but against a really tanky lineup, you may want to consider getting one. Then finally, like pretty much all attack damage champions, you could get a Guardian Angel. This is a really solid option on Vayne because it increases your attack damage and has a really nice defensive shield as well that allows you to come back to life in the later stages of the game. For my example full build though, I'd like to take that core build with some Berserker Greaves and get Rapid Fire Cannon, Mercurial Scimitar, and Guardian Angel. You'll be putting out an absolute ton of damage with those first 3 items, and the Mercurial Scimitar will give you some nice lifesteal and a great way to get out of a crowd control, and Guardian Angel the option to come back to life if you do end up dying in the later game. It's an all-around pretty solid offensive and defensive build that can allow Vayne to carry in the later game. And that's everything for AD Carry Vayne.
If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and visit my video description below. I have a link to all my social medias, and I do also have a Discord server, so that's one you should definitely check out. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching. I really do appreciate it, so take it easy, have a good day, and peace.